Most people are just being attacked by criminals who want to steal money or steal information they can sell for money. So how do we just protect ourselves from that?
So, how can your business come in, and at what stage can you come in and actually help organizations with what you've just described?
Deborah, thank you very much indeed for inviting me to come and do this podcast. It's really fun talking about all the things that we do. And one of my companies, the name is Diegesis, which means to hand over information as a narrator. So I do enjoy my soapbox, standing on my soapbox sometimes. So a great opportunity. Today we're going to talk about cybersecurity, and it's a very, very interesting topic. It's been the subject of many, many hours, hundreds of hours of discussion across the world, and yet the same old things always come up. We sell my parent company, we sell a product called Policy Monitor. It's a cloud-based application based in the appropriate geographies, so we protect all your data and all that sort of thing. And what we're trying to do is to help people find a simple and effective way to manage their cybersecurity. However, our biggest competition is do nothing. Stick your head in the sand, hope the problem goes away. There was a very interesting salesman's discussion a few years ago, which said something like there are two sorts of companies: the companies that know they've been hacked and the companies that don't know that they have been hacked. And it was so destructive because if you are in one of those categories and you don't know you've been hacked, therefore you have been hacked, you just don't know, and you're still in business, well, why bother? And of course, it completely set the wrong tone because companies that do get hacked, particularly small ones, go out of business so quickly because they just run out of money because while they're repairing their environment, they aren't doing business. And so many small SMEs live from month to month, quarter to quarter. So suddenly losing all the revenue for 3 months, you're gone. Cash flow is king. So it is. So it's staggering how few people, or sorry, let me rephrase it. It is staggering how people can still take that "it won't happen to me" attitude, but they do.
And if I can interject here, because you've just sparked something in my mind. I was in Marks and Spencer's the other day, M&S, good old M&S. And the lady said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do this transaction now. You've got to kind of do this." And I said, "Oh, why is that?" So she said, "Oh, it's because of the cybersecurity breach that we had." And I said, "Oh my goodness." I said, "This is dreadful." I said, "How is this affecting your suppliers?" And she said, "It's absolutely nailing them. It's awful." She said, "A lot of people we know are going out of business who supply us because of our issues." And so if you are a small business, and I know the same is with Jaguar Land Rover at the moment, at the time this podcast is going out, in the UK, we've had some really disastrous cybersecurity issues with large corporations. And I remember selling in an operational management project into Jaguar Land Rover a number of years ago when things, were different. But small suppliers to these larger organizations can go to the wall if the larger organization that they supply is having these issues. And it's not just about keeping yourself cyber secure. You've got to always be aware of who are you actually supplying in the chain to make sure that it doesn't affect you in a knock-on effect.
Absolutely. And most of the organizations that we talk about have actually put a lot of time and effort and rigor into their cybersecurity policies and defense. And so often, though I don't know exactly what the causes were of either of those two, I'm looking forward to reading the reports when they come out. Nevertheless, so often the attack is via a subcontractor or a subcontractor who has access and therefore can unfortunately inject or allow some of the vulnerabilities that take place. And I think the Jaguar Land Rover one, for instance, was an introduction of malware which affected everything in the whole production line. They lost everything, and so they don't even know. So they lost all the data for all the cars on the production line. So you've got this car here. What am I supposed to put on it? I don't know. So how are they going to restart that? Absolutely fascinating.
Well, it
Uh,
is. I mean, fascinating to a degree, and then when you're in it, it's absolutely hellish.
mm,
And so, from that perspective, we had a little chat before we came on air, and you kindly were mentioning the six key elements of how to put cybersecurity in with purpose and rigor. And I think for the audience, I think it would be great if we could perhaps go through those in order so that people can kind of have them off as a checklist to make sure that they're covering the bases. And of course, you can come into the organization and make life very, very simple for them in a very affordable way. I know you can, but just for the sake of making sure that people are aware of how this actually can build out, do please do take us through those points if you wouldn't mind.
Certainly. Just before I do, it is
Mm.
nevertheless it's nevertheless important to work out how you create in in the lingo an eager want for people to start to engage. There are different ways that they can engage, and we see three particular mechanisms for engagement. So the first one is an organization who's trying to do the right thing, wants to get certified. There's a certification called Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, which have been produced through GCHQ and through NCSC and managed by a company called IASME to provide a robust framework, which, if well implemented, gives a very high level of security. So the government says if you haven't got this, you can't do business with government. So that is one route through to where people want to get this certification. Now, the problem with them, or problem with some of them, is that they want to get the certification today, and then they will throw it in the bin or put it in the drawer, as the phrase goes, and they won't look at it for another year when they need to become certified. And that is really a cop out because the certification is all about your information security policy and how you implement it. And so you are saying, I am doing all of this. So if you take those certifications seriously, you define what you're going to do and you do that through the year. There's another part, and I will come back to that because that's probably one of the most important points. There is another route through where people don't even understand the policy, and they know that they have vulnerabilities on their system, and attacks via ransomware, a very common route through is when you have deployed software that's out of date, has got vulnerabilities in, those vulnerabilities have been published for 3, 6, 9 months. You haven't patched your systems, and therefore people over time find ways to get in and attack you. And that's a classic route for getting malware and ransomware and all that sort of stuff in. And then the other part is the third part that we see is quite popular is the I was at the pub last night, or I was down the golf club at the weekend, and friends of mine were telling me they've written out checks to some criminals for 150 grand, and they don't want that to happen to them. Or they've been ransomwared and they couldn't recover, and it took them ages to recover. So everybody knows somebody who has been attacked, and so they're trying to work out what's the first most important thing I should put in place to address the highest risks. For them, the vulnerability scanning is important, but I liken it to there's no point listening to a salesman and putting the equivalent of a 20-foot wall barbed wire searchlights at the front of the house and having a hedge that anybody can walk through at the back of the house. So the critical thing when you're looking at this overall is to make sure that you've got a 4-foot wall around the house, all the way around the house, so you've got a consistent level of defence. And when somebody else realise they've got to need a 4-foot wall as well, you're in a position now because you understand what you're doing to make it an 8-foot wall. And there is a lovely joke. If you're being chased by a bear, you don't have to run faster than the bear, just faster than your friends. Cyber criminals are just criminals. If they can attack 10 companies in the same time as it take them to attack one company, yours, then they'll go and find all the low-hanging fruit and they'll ignore you until there's nobody left. And of course, there's always people left, unfortunately. So if we then go back to the start, the what we are trying to do is to help people have an adoption curve so they can start going. They don't have to bust their business by paying millions of pounds for cybersecurity technology, which they haven't got. So how do we help them put that first layer of bricks around the house, then make it a 2 foot wall, then make it a 4 foot wall, then a 6 foot wall, then an 8 foot wall, and just progressively build up, constantly identifying where the weakest links are and protecting them, rather than being sold the greatest all singing or dancing, and then somebody will just walks around it and avoids it, so it's worthless. And so, to that extent, the, firstly, we've got to create an eagle one. We've got to explain people the threat. We've got to help them understand the risks they're facing, and not to blow it up, not to dramatize it. Just keep it really simple. Once people can understand the risks and know they've got to do something, then we get into the place where we can start to define an information security policy.
Mm.
And the information security policy says, if I've got these risks, these are the things I'm going to do every day, every week, every month, every quarter to protect myself from that risk materializing. And it also says, if this does happen, this is the plan for what I'm going to do about it. And I have thought it through. So a contingency plan. And so by building up your information security policy, started to do a few things initially. Then when that is a second nature to everybody, adding a few more things, and then adding a few more things, and then adding a few more things, then you can progressively develop your protections. You can be running faster than your friends, and so start to provide some robust defences to provide some robust defences that you can grow as time goes on.
And if I can just interject there, because what you've said to me is like most things in life, if you want to do them well, you have to do something little and often. You have to have this consistency in place whereby you don't just take a piece of paper like you've alluded to with the certification and put it in the drawer and forget about it. It's not good enough because that's not going to protect you. So when you're speaking to people who are solopreneurs, smaller businesses, etc., with very scarce resource to be able to put to this, how do you help people to understand how they can manage the time that it takes without it being onerous? Because we've all got to run businesses as well as do everything else. What's that looking like for the small business owner? How many hours do you think at entry level or getting up a little bit above the 2 foot parapet that it's going to take a business owner on a regular basis?
So, unfortunately, it is a how long's a bit of string, but it is not a disaster in answering that question. If somebody goes to the IASME website and downloads the Cyber Essentials certification questions, just search on Google for Cyber Essentials. They're right up near the top because they run the Cyber Essentials scheme. And you get a questionnaire of about 90 questions. It used to be 60 questions a few years ago. It's become more sophisticated, but about 90 questions. And if you read those questions, they are so well written that anybody with a modest degree of IT savvy will at least understand the question. They will know what it's referring to, and they will probably know whether they can answer yes or no to them. If they answer yes, they pass, almost, but pretty close. If they answer no, then they fail. But the question is so structured that you know, if you answer no, you know what you've got to do, or you have a man who will help you to do what you've got to do to be able to answer yes. And therefore, as a consequence, it's very straightforward, or pretty straightforward, to build up your information security policy, which essentially says I will do all the things that allow me to say yes to my Cyber Essentials certification every year. Cyber Essentials is particularly good at helping you frame that policy because of this ease of understanding. If you want to get the gold standard for cybersecurity is probably ISO 27001. And if you're going to 27001, you've probably got to pay 50 or 100K to get a consultant in just to explain to you what the standard means. Whereas IASME and CE are really, really easy to grab hold of. So, in an ideal world, you would a business with a decent outsourcer and a good system administrator might be able to go through those lists in 2 or 3 days. And in going through that list and doing a risk assessment, counting up all the bits of kit that they've got in the organization, they will then be able to say, okay, how long, I can now make an assessment of how long it's going to take me to do the things I've got to do. So, for example, how many companies have still got Windows 10 laptops in their organization? Well, Windows 10 is now out of support. So if you've got any vulnerabilities developing on it, there's no one going to help you. So you may not be able to update your laptops to Windows 11 because they may not have the right internal hardware. So it may be that you've got to go out and buy another 5, 10, 20 new computers to be on Windows 11 and therefore to be compliant. Similarly, if you've got mobile phones in the business and the mobile phones have company data on, then they're within the scope of your Cyber Essentials assessment, but quite a common way to get into a company via mobile phones. So they must be on a supported operating system. So it may be that you've got to go and buy some more mobile phones. So it's non-trivial. There may well be cost. So let's identify it and analyze it. And you may therefore say, terribly sorry, chaps, 10 of you who aren't on supported phones, you just got to wipe Outlook off and remove all your company data from that, get them out of scope until next quarter or next half year when we've got the cash to go and replace them. So there will be things like that. Other aspects, let's take cost out. We've got 2 Windows servers in the business, and they're on very old hardware. We forgot that they were there until we ran a scan on our network and found them, and they're way out of support. Oh my God, they've got all these vulnerabilities on as well. No one knew about it. So rather than go through an exercise of replacing those servers, one of the things we do is get everybody to go to Microsoft 365 and use the content management system and move their data into SharePoint. Now, SharePoint isn't perfect. Microsoft have some issues on occasions, but the level of integrity and protection of these cloud providers when their whole businesses depend on it is usually much, much higher than the protection you're able to put and manage you're able to put on your servers. So there are different strategies you can follow to say yes to the question. It's not, and that gives you the opportunity to spend a lot of money here, or spend money there, or spend money over here, or just get rid of that and not spend anything at all because it's old. You never really need it. You've just been hanging on to it, and classic British people do.
Don't throw anything out.
Absolutely, nothing like a good order. So that process, that risk assessment, generally needs some tools. So something that will go and do a vulnerability assessment on your network is a really good idea because it will find everything on your network. Does require everybody to be in the office to find everybody else's laptops in the office. But they're pretty good. So you can do a risk assessment, and therefore you can progressively identify all the things you've got to do. And we could talk at length about all the things that could be in policy And if one is uncertain, one can go and ask for find some consulting support or seek support from a managed service provider if you outsource. However, once you've got your policy, what is it that stops that policy going back into the drawer and being forgotten about for a year? And we think the way to do that is to turn that policy into a series of automated workflows, the things that you will do every day, every month, as I was talking about, and then send that task off to someone and manage the completion of that task. If we have a dashboard, we can see all the tasks that are done, all the tasks that should be being done and haven't, and we can chivvy people to complete their tasks, and therefore we can maintain our compliance with our own information security policy, which is great. However, if I send an email to 60 people in the company and say, please go onto your phone and tell me what the operating system is that you're running, and I need this by Friday, what's the chance of them all responding? As close to zero as makes no difference. And it would be very time consuming if every week we had to ask people for information that could be obtained from somewhere else. So one of the things we do to augment those workflows is we find pieces of technology. We look for low cost technologies wherever we can do, so that will do just enough to take the drudge away from all those checks. So we integrate into the technology, which organizations may already have. So we'll just integrate into it. We will suck the critical data out, and then we'll pop it into the evidence section of the task that we're required to fix. And so we can show that the tasks are being done and appropriate evidence is being collected, and therefore we are maintaining our information security policy. So the year comes to the year comes to an end, and the assessor comes in and says, "Okay, it's time to redo your CE." Are we an organisation which goes, "Oh my God, where do we put it? The people who did it last year have left. What do I do now? How do I go and find it?" And they go into a tailspin because no one has done anything during the year. On the other hand, if we've been good citizens and we have been doing everything during that year and we've been collecting that evidence, then we can just we can just bundle the evidence up, show it to the assessor and say, there we are. We've done everything we said we we're going to do the year. So here's the evidence now today, but we've also got an audit trail going back through the year, which shows that we were doing everything well. Oops, we slipped up there. We corrected it quickly. We've been doing everything well during the period, so you can give us a clean bill of health. At which point the auditor almost certainly says, you didn't realize there are 3 more questions. So actually you do have to do this, and I'm afraid the answer to that is now is not good enough because we've had to tighten that because a whole load of people have been attacked. So we've made that more robust. So you do need to go and do a little bit more, I'm afraid. But the amount of effort to gently enhance a few of the tasks is so small by comparison with the, oh my God, we've got to start again from scratch approach every year. So, and therefore you can demonstrate that you are keeping yourself safe. And the sorts of things we're talking about here are when an assessor is assessing an organization, they will generally do a vulnerability scan using one of the certified products, and they so often find vulnerabilities there. And some of these vulnerabilities might have been there for 3, 6, 9 months. They came out just a couple of months after your last review, and and people have been attacked by those, and you could easily be attacked by those. So maintaining your cyber hygiene all the way through the year by buying just enough technology, not to make you go bust by spending all your profits on cyber tech, but buying enough to keep you reasonably safe on a sensible cost benefits analysis. The and this is where the audit trail, or this is where the dashboard again becomes so important, because if we've now automated some of this stuff and we've got feeds automatic coming in saying that vulnerabilities have occurred on these machines, then the director of security needs to know that that is happening. So that so he needs to know the overall risk profile. It may be that those are near misses, because it took us 6 weeks to spot that one before we got it before the right patch came out. So we were vulnerable for 6 weeks before the vendor provided a patch. Not normally the case. Normally, the vendors are very good at addressing high risk pieces. But by monitoring, we're constantly getting an understanding of the threat that's facing us, and therefore the why it is so important to take this seriously. And the sorts of things we can add into these probes are things like scanning the dark web for data that the organization holds, just to make sure that there's nothing that can be found as leaked. It's a lot more embarrassing, much better to find it yourself and do something with it quickly than have a police officer call you up to tell you they found all your data on the dark web. And by the way, the ICO knows, and why haven't you reported it syndrome. So, and so that by maintaining our 6 foot or 8 foot wall, by putting all these measures in place, we may not be so secure that government agencies from various geographies could break into us if they wanted to, but that's very unlikely to happen to most organisations. We're not BA systems with the Chinese trying to steal all the plans of Eurofighter or whatever. Most people are just being attacked by criminals who want to steal money or steal information they can sell for money. So how do we just protect ourselves from that? I think that covers the key points that I was trying to say. How do we create an eager want and explain to people why they need to do something? How do we help them put the policy in place that is appropriate to the threats of their business, so they spend an appropriate amount of money to get protection? How do they get feedback to show that the money they're spending is doing its job? How do we then turn this into workflows? How do we then push those workflows out to people? Have a dashboard to monitor how everybody is doing, and indeed how all our technology is doing. Having that audit trail, so that if we do have a breach and the ICO knocks on our door, we can show we were doing the right things. We are meeting all our standards. We're meeting our obligations on our information security policy, which had been signed off by our CE assessor. So we've been good citizens. And then and by using integration tools, we've then tried to reduce the impact on our business of time-consuming tasks by using software to do as much of the work as we can to collect that data and prove that we're doing the right thing. And that monitoring and reporting is critical, because it's the thing that demonstrates to people that what we've done is providing value, and it's also it's providing value, and it's not excessive, so that it's doing its job, and so we know we've chosen the right kit.
And so, Nick, what it would be really helpful for people as well is to think about how your business comes into this to actually help people on this journey and in this process. Because again, to have somebody that has been around the block a few times and seen things from different perspectives, can only be a good thing when it's actually something which, you're thinking, well, what are other people doing? Similar businesses, or where's things coming from left field that we've got to be thinking about? So, how can your business come in, and at what stage can you come in and actually help organizations with what you've just described?
So at the start, I talked about our product Policy Monitor, and Policy Monitor is designed to meet as many of these objectives as we practically can. So we help people define their own policies, and we do it by showing them all the controls that they could select to put into their policy that are consistent with Cyber Essentials or IASME or ISO 27001 or NIS2 or CAF, any of these standards. And we've created a generic set of controls, which if you followed all of them, would allow you to be compliant with those standards. And you can select the controls that you think are appropriate to your business. You can discard the controls that aren't appropriate to your business because you just don't do the thing that they're related to. And we can flag up you don't. It's not included because you don't need it. So that people can build their information security policies and and those controls are mapped into workflows, and so we can onboard organisations, help them identify the people that need to be engaged, help them to then define who will receive a task as one of these workflows, and then we can get the workflows running around, being executed in the business, the results brought back to the dashboard, and so the director of security hopefully can sleep easy in their bed because they can see that everybody is doing the right thing. And then we also have an integration bus and which reaches out into some of the technologies that are required. We don't cover all of them yet. There's so much that we could go for. So we've implemented integrations into integrations into a vulnerability scanning tool called Qualys, which is one of the leading ones. So we can, at a very low cost, using consultant's pack, install an agent on all proper computers, so all Windows machines, Linux machines, and whatever. Unfortunately, things like printers and switches and routers, a customer probably still has to go and use the full scanner and needs a bit of consulting support, a few hours a day or so of consulting support to scan the entirety of their network. And that's something but those devices don't change very often, so they're much lower risk than people's laptops, where some people are putting software on that they shouldn't be doing. And so the ability to lock those down and make sure they're properly managed, and we can do that very economically. So we charge a very small fee per user to have the workflow capabilities, and then we charge incremental fees, but still very modest, to take on each of the facilities. And as we add to them, people can choose whether they want them or not, or we can integrate. If they've already got those facilities, we can integrate into them. And then each year we can push the results of their cybersecurity review up into the IASME solution, where the assessor can work on it and decide whether they passed or not. And then whatever changes they make to their policy and their workflows, we can then carry those on through the year. And of course, as you'd appreciate, of recording all the workflows being done, there's a good audit trail that shows what's happening. And so we try to make sure that cost is not an obstacle. We think we can succeed by scaling out and creating this light touch capability for a lot of SMEs, rather than having to charge huge amounts of money and therefore limit our customer market to companies turning over hundreds of millions of pounds. We'd like to support any SME that's big enough to have to worry about cybersecurity.
And that was going to be a question of mine, which customers, because I'm sure people watching and listening to this will be thinking, well, are they going to want to deal with me? What type of business am I? So if you're thinking about the types of business that you help in the market, could you just describe a selection of those so that people can think, oh, actually, yes, I fall into that type of category?
So I think strictly it would be any business, even one-man bands. We have a couple of one-man bands. The proviso is people have got to take it seriously. We can provide a lot of help, and and once we've got people going, we only charge them a relatively small amount. So the quid pro quo is we hope that they will then go and tell their friends that we have done a great job for them, and it's really easy to use, and therefore they will help us with our marketing and similarly, we look to them to say, "I don't understand this bit," or "That was a bit confusing to me," or "This was really brilliant. Could you do more like that?" So that we get regular feedback, so we can improve the product. The other part, where most of our customers come actually, is by selling to managed service providers, the outsourcers who are looking after SMEs technology. Um, Yes, a small business knows they've got to do cyber, but I'll start that next week.
Yeah.
Start that next week
Yeah.
because if you don't understand cyber, it seems like this huge problem. But you are still responsible for SME for your data. And if you hold data about other people, it's vital you protect it. And a lot of people then go to MSPs to help them look after their technology and their security, but they cannot devolve the responsibility to an MSP. They are still responsible. However, MSPs now have taken on the role, and they know that they will get the blame, even if they can't, even if they aren't legally responsible. So we find working with MSPs a really good route to market because they might have 150 customers, ranging from a five-man band to a 100-man band, and if they have got to provide this security, then we provide a very economic way of doing the technical stuff, which they could all do, but if we can do it more economically, then that's great for everybody. And also doing getting the people stuff going. So, have you got an information security policy? Here's a draft one. You must follow it, and say, okay, Mr. Customer, this is what you've got to do. If you don't do it, then I cannot provide your security. I cannot underwrite your security. If you do all of this, I can then support you properly. And so but I'll help you with it. I'll charge you to help you with it, but it'll only be a small increment because you're already paying me to do most of the work anyway. And so, if you've got an MSP, then go and ask them to speak to us, and then we can engage through them, and that we found that very effective.
And interestingly enough, with regards to this as well, I just want to touch because I'm conscious of time, and it might be that we have you back again so that we can talk about this in more detail. But things like deep fake, AI issues, etc., how can you actually help your customers to steer clear of things that are catching people at every turn, thinking that they're dealing with an entity and it's not them? How are you helping people? Because you've mentioned writing £150,000 checks to criminals. How can you help people to spot perhaps the alarm bells and the red flags?
So it is it is very interesting looking at podcasts, for example. You've seen that now, a lot of podcasts where it's very clear that they've all been produced by AI. But when the techniques that the scammers are following are very, very cunning. And so, though I don't write off the ability of AI to confuse people, nevertheless, it still seems to me the case that most of them are person-driven attacks, because what they try to do is to suddenly make you really busy, suddenly bombard you with things you've got to do very quickly, and then slide in. Oh, just do this. I almost got caught the other day. Uh, I can't quite remember how it developed. And and the person said, "Well, just tell me the number on your phone." And I was just about to, and the person sitting next to me overheard this conversation. And of course, they weren't involved in the play. They said, "Nick, stop! Do you realise what you're doing?" And that was enough to make me stop and think, and suddenly realise I had I'd almost been done. And I actually use that as a example of why I strongly encourage people to get back and work in the office, because I probably would have been caught if I'd just been sitting in my study at home. But because I was in the office and other people were listening to what I was doing, then that saved us. So, so I haven't properly answered your question. There are a lot of products already that are using AI in quite an effective way to see stuff going on the network, which is there, but we don't have an insight into it, and so AI can spot attacks, spot breaches, see where things are going wrong. At the moment, though, that's the 20-foot. I would argue that's the 20-foot wall, barbed wire, and searchlights problem, because we still find people who haven't done a backup, or they're doing a backup and it's a full backup once a month, and that's the only backup they've got. So if you've been ransomwared and the ransomware is already inside your system, how do you get rid of it? So adopting a backup technology which is not like that, but it takes immutable, i.e., you can't change it, uh, incremental layered backups, so that you can go back to any time in the past and recover to that point, and then step through file by file if you really had to and you could recover your data. It take a long time, but you could recover it. Whereas too many organizations can't recover their data. My father was involved in the British Library did a vocal record of people, and he was an aircraft engineer just after the war, and so he had done a whole load of recordings for the BBC, and they're all lost. Sorry, for the British Library, and they're all lost. Um,
Oh, heartbreaking. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's just, I mean, when you're faced with that, I mean, it makes you feel sick, I'm sure, is that fact that you lose your data. So I would say to anybody, have a chat with Nick, because as you can tell, he's a fount of knowledge and a very affable and reasonable person. Doesn't come of it from his eagle perch. He's there with you. It doesn't matter where you are with your learning on this. He can be a complete beginner or seasoned veteran in this. He's able to make sure that he can say things in ways that people understand, which is very important. And there's nothing like a stupid question, because ultimately things are developing all the time.
Mm.
And so I would absolutely advocate, have a chat with Nick. And Nick, how can people get hold of you?
So nick.denning at diegesis.co.uk, or nick.denning at policymonitor.co.uk, or just Google me. That I did it uh, for my sanity. I did it the other day, and I still do pop up fairly close to the top of the list, so people can easily find me. But I'm Nick Denning. On my LinkedIn, it's just Nick Denning. I've been on LinkedIn for so long, so yeah, I'm reasonably easy to find.
Perfect. And you did mention obviously Policy Monitor as an organization, and then said Diegesis. Now, people might be struggling a little with that. So, how do they spell that? What are they looking out for?
So diegesis is Diegesis. It was the first word I liked in the English dictionary, that where the domain name was free when when I set up the current group of companies, and it means to hand over information to hand over information as a narrator. So I rather liked that.
That's Diegesis. There's
Di,
one
di,
for the,
di, Diegesis, Dieg. Yeah.
yeah, lovely. Policy Monitor, maybe a little bit more easy to remember. do get Nick. It's Nick Denning, Denning, Nick Denning at Policy Monitor. And it's something which I think is incredibly valuable, especially now. The big guys, they're out there, they're getting done. So it's only a matter of time that people are going to feel the pinch of this and feel that things are going to happen to them. Don't be lax with this because, as I said, it's always, "Oh, it won't happen to me." And then when it does, it's a disaster. It would wipe you out for weeks and weeks, and potentially you could lose your business over it and also perhaps be sued by others because of data protection, etc. So do have a chat with Nick. It's such a vital subject. Nick, thank you very much. Is there anything just before we close that you think, if there was one thing more that I could tell the audience, I'd do it? Is there anything that you could leave us with that you think that you haven't already?
So, if you wouldn't mind a sales pitch, even very briefly, what we are
Yeah.
trying to do is to help everybody in the market. So, we want to collaborate with cybersecurity consultancies, we want to collaborate with product vendors, we want to collaborate with MSPs, and of course, we want to collaborate with our customers to help them to protect themselves. And we were originally the idea to do this arose from David Cameron's statement. He wants to make the UK the safest place to do electronic business, and that's what we think we can help with. Cost. We are so competitive that cost, it cannot be an obstacle. The obstacle is just getting going.
Thank you, Nick. Well said. And as I said, I'm a huge advocate. So please do be in touch with Nick. I think you'll get lots of information for free, valuable information by having a chat. So thank you, Nick. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Sphere of Success podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, Deborah.
And for everybody listening and watching, thank you as well. Like, comment, subscribe, and please share as well because you just don't know who this could be extremely important for. And until next time, be successful, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye bye now.